The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the neighborhood meeting for Walnut Grove PDP Amendment for Applewood Point Senior Housing. I'm Amy Johnson and I'll be the planner and introducing this project this evening. We will be streaming on YouTube at this link that hopefully you can see on your screens. And we will just give everyone just a few minutes to make sure that they can join before we start the presentation.
I'm going to turn my camera off, Amy, unless you want me to leave it on.
That's fine, and I'll ask everyone if they can please mute and maybe turn their cameras off until it's time to speak.
Okay.
In case you're just joining us, I'm Amy Johnson. You have arrived virtually, you probably know, but just in case you don't know for sure, this is the neighborhood meeting for the Walnut Grove PDP Amendment for Applewood Senior Housing and Applewood Point. And I will be the planner introducing this project this evening. We will just give everyone a couple more minutes to make sure they figure out how to join before we begin. In case you've just joined us, I'm Amy Johnson. I'll be the planner presenting this neighborhood meeting this evening for Walnut Grove PDP amendment for Applewood Point Senior Housing. And we'll just give everyone one more minute to make sure they can join us. We will be streaming on YouTube, and it will be recorded and posted at this YouTube link here in case anyone wants to view it later. Okay, I have 6:05, and looks like we may have had one more join us. So hello and welcome to the neighborhood meeting for Walnut Grove PDP Amendment for Applewood Point Senior Housing. I'm Amy Johnson, Senior Planner. I'll be the main point of contact at the city for this project. As you can see here with this link, this meeting is being streamed on YouTube, and there will be a recording there as well for anyone to view later. And here's our agenda for this evening. We will obviously begin as we have. I'll give you an overview of the project location and the application, explain the process, and just show you the standards of approval for PDP amendments. Then I will introduce the members of staff and then introduce the applicant who will present their project to you. We will have a question, answer, and public comment segment, and of course conclusion. And I think we'll probably be able to stop at 7, but we are able to run over just a little bit in case there are further questions. So as you probably know, but in case there's any confusion, this is the project location. It's about 10.69 acres at the southwest corner of 108th Avenue and Wadsworth Parkway. And here's an overview of our process for this PDP amendment. We had a pre-application back in the spring. Then they submitted the PDP for review back in the fall. We have now at the city given them comments on that review. And as we typically recommend, we are now having the neighborhood meeting. The applicant will then, after this meeting, make changes per the input and comments that they receive and submit the application to the city again. There will then be, of course, second and subsequent rounds of review as needed. And once we have determined the application is as complete as possible, we will schedule planning commission and city council public hearings. So the purpose of this PDP amendment application that we have received at the city is to change a use on the PDP of record. So the comprehensive plan designation says that this property is already residential. However, the PDP of record says that the use for this particular parcel is retail and commercial. So this amendment would change that use to make it senior housing residential. The PDP will also show general pedestrian and vehicular circulation routes on it. The ODP will be submitted subsequently, at which point we will have another neighborhood meeting. And while you will tonight see from the applicant building concepts and the building footprint, these would generally not be a part of a PDP for just a use change and have not yet been reviewed by the city and won't be until we receive a an ODP application. That stands for Official Development Plan. I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt myself for a second here. I see another question. I'm sorry, the Uplands meeting, I believe, is going to be next week. this is not for Uplands tonight. No Uplands meeting tonight for the neighborhood meeting. I believe it has been rescheduled to next week. Would anyone else like to speak to that at this time?
Yes, that's correct. The Uplands meeting is scheduled for the 27th.
Thank you, John.
And the
Okay,
26th.
Oh, sorry, and the 26th?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should clarify. 2 nights, the 26th and the 27th.
26th and 27th. Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry for any confusion there. So here I have the PDP amendment standards for approval, and I'm not going to read through all of these. I can certainly refer back to these as needed. I do just want to say that we have many members of city staff reviewing to ensure that these standards are met. And so at this time, I will introduce those members of staff who are in attendance tonight. And I'll just read down their names. We have Alex Gann with Public Works and Utilities. He can answer any questions about utilities. We have Jennifer Baden, Planning Aide, who will be helping us with some of the technical aspects tonight. We have John McConnell, Principal Planner, who was just speaking to clarify the Uplands meeting. We have John Van with Parks, Recreation, and Libraries and Open Space. We have Michael Wright, who is in Engineering and Community Development. Also Nathan Ank, Engineering, specializing in drainage. We have Nicole Ankeny, also with Parks, Recreation, Libraries, and Open Space. We have Rita McConnell, Planning Manager. And I believe that is it. I was hoping Heath Klein was going to be here, but he may be delayed. He is with traffic. Oh wait, I'm sorry, he is here. I must have skipped over him. Heath Klein is with Traffic and Community Development, so he can answer any questions about traffic and points of access. So thanks to all those staff members for being here tonight. And at this time, I will introduce Eric Checkle, who is the applicant, the main applicant speaking tonight. He has other members of his team, and he will introduce his project to you.
Thank you, Amy. I am Eric Checkle. I am a senior project manager for United Properties. United Properties is a company based here in Colorado. Been here for about 15 years. We also have offices in Minnesota as well as in Austin, Texas. But here in Colorado, our focus is senior living. We do quite a bit of industrial as well as some retail, office, and other commercial uses. So this property you're looking at on the map here, this is a good aerial that gives a really good idea of the lay of the land out there. So what we're talking about today is the southwest corner of 108th and Wadsworth. Currently, we do not own the property outright yet. We have it under contract with the Cooper family. The Coopers are the family that owned all this property south of 108th, west of Wadsworth in the past. And this, I believe, is their final piece of property that they have. As Amy mentioned, this property is currently designated in a PDP as a commercial retail use. This 10.7 acres, give or take, quite a while back was originally designated to be, I think it was going to be a King Soopers. And just with the change in times and things that happened over the years, that use fell out of favor. So like I said, we put the property under contract just about a year ago with the Cooper family with the intention of building a senior living facility. So it's a independent active senior living community that we want to build here. And this is a product that we call Applewood Point. It's a product that we've developed over a dozen of these in Minnesota. So this would be our first one here in Colorado, and hopefully it's the first of many. So Amy, if you don't mind turning to the next page, which is our site plan. Oh, there it is. So this is the plan that if you got the mailer that we sent out a couple weeks ago, this is the plan that was in that mailer. And what we're showing here is the active adult community, which is I like to call it a bent H. And it's kind of shown in a yellowy, greenish hued color there. And so that's proposed to be a 3-story building. Around that building, as you see in gray, that wraps around probably about 300 degrees of that building, that's asphalt. And then you see the stripes on there, which is for parking. Also, we have an underground garage that's on the entrance is on the east side of the building. You could see Amy's little arrow there showing where that entry is. That's ingress and egress into that garage. So speaking specifically about the building, it's like I said, it's 3 stories. It will house 85 units, or we like to call them homes. So it's 85 homes. That's a total of about 127,000 square feet of those 85 homes. And those homes range in size from 1,200 square feet up to about 1,900 square feet. So there's a large range of those homes. But they all have 2 bedrooms, they all have 2 bathrooms, and they all have a laundry room. Several of them will have studies or sunrooms, as well as decks and patios if you're on the main floor. So it's made up of, like I said, the 85 homes, but there's also quite a bit of common area within the building. So that added common area is really quite a plus for this development, and that includes many things like a large foyer or lobby when you walk in, a large great room, game room. There's a library, fitness room, conference rooms, an arts and crafts room, as well as individual storage units for all 85, an individual storage unit for all 85 residents, or 85 homes. Then also we have this underground garage, which isn't just for parking, but that will house at least 85 parking stalls in there. Right now it's laid out for about 93. So you want to make sure there's at least one for every home. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the parking around the facility, we like to hit about 70% more than the number in the garage. So there's another 60 or so parking stalls around the facility meant for visitors, some residents who might have a second vehicle. But also down in that garage, we want to make sure that that our residents have everything that they need. So we also put in a spray off car wash. There's a hobby shop down there, a pet wash or a pet spa area, place to store gardening supplies. We will have some gardening areas outside, bike maintenance shop. We also have electric car charging stations within the garage for those owners that have an electric car. We also have bike storage down there, and electric bikes are becoming more popular these days too. So we've added electric bike charging stations as well within these facilities. So you might have seen throughout the Denver metro area that there's senior living, independent living for seniors, but a lot of that stuff is rental. If it's not a condominium, it's typically a rental unit. That's not what this is. These are homes for ownership. So every home in here, all 85 homes, are set up to be, you need to be 62 or older to be the owner of one of these homes, which designates it as a senior living facility. But the beauty to this is that there is true ownership, and And so what that means to us, and I think is helpful for the neighborhood and for the neighbors, is that, it's that sense of ownership. So these folks care about the long-term look, care, feel, and the value of these homes, not just of the building itself, but also of the grounds that this building sits on. Speaking of that, so it's a 10.7 acre piece of property, and I got some information here from my civil engineer, because I'm going to get a little nerdy on land areas here and percentages, if that's okay. So it's 10.7 acres, and the building footprint's only 1.44 acres. So that's about 13% of the overall site. The asphalt, where all the parking is going to be, and the emergency access, which is the roads that curve around the back side, that's only about 1.5 acres, so another 14% of the site. So everything that you see in green or in blue, which is the detention ponds, that's about little over 7 acres. So 66% of this site is going to be landscaped. I don't intend for it to be all irrigated, because I think that would not be environmentally conscious. So we plan to do quite a bit of xeriscaping, something that we still need to work out with the city. But being that it's over 7 acres of landscaped area, I really feel like this building sits within an oasis of landscaping and trails. The trails there is another. We have about a mile worth of trails that we're planning on building. It's about 5,900 length feet actually, which is another about 6% of the site. So I didn't check this, but I'm assuming, because it's from my engineer, that it probably adds up to 100% of the site, with the bulk of it, being landscaping and open areas. The building itself is not staffed for care. It's truly intended for independent, active seniors. So there really is only 3 staff members that will be working here. There's a maintenance person that maintains the interior and exterior of the property. I'm sure they will hire, someone to come mow and plow, but that person will maintain the interior of the building, and will also hire that staff or those companies to come maintain the facility. We have a cleaning person. They don't clean the units, but they clean all the common area. With so much common area, the 1,700 plus square feet, we want to make sure that it's maintained properly. And then there's a property manager. So that person doesn't only manage the books, but they're also an activity manager and the resident liaison. Like if someone wants to sell their unit, that person would be involved in the sale, of their home. From there, I was going to walk around the site a little bit, Amy, and I don't know if it's possible to maybe zoom in a little, or if not, we can just walk around. I was going to start at the main entry, which is where this turnaround is at the northeast corner, and I was going to go around clockwise around the building. So this at the main entry, there will be a covered driveway that'll just cover a covered drop off, I should call it, for the vehicles to pull in under. We did orient the building towards the intersection. That was a suggestion by the city. Originally, we had, been working on this, as I said, for almost a year now, and we had the building laid out quite a bit differently. And based on some recommendations from the city, we did turn the building to feed off of the intersection, so that there is a very good view in from that intersection towards that inner shape of the building. We think it lays out real well because of how with the views to the southwest towards the mountains and over Walnut Creek, I really think we're going to have wonderful views of this building. So then on the east side of the building, we touched on this already, there's an access into the garage. And that is the only access in and out of the garage. So that's on the eastern wing there. And also in the garage, I didn't mention, where all of our trash in the 3 stories, that trash will be shooted, if that's the right word, down into the garage, into bins for trash and also for recycling. So trash pickup will be in the garage. If it's determined at some point that there isn't enough room or it's too complicated to get the trash trucks down towards the garage, we had to build some bins on the outside or a trash enclosure on the outside, that would be located east of the building. But all the ones we've been doing in Minnesota to date, they've all been able to access the trash trucks have been able to access into the garage. So that is truly our intent, that those bins will be in the garage. We also show on the plan in this gray box, the city did ask us to show potential emergency access for vehicles off of Wadsworth. Currently, we don't show that as being needed based on fire department and discussions with the building department, but we're showing that possibly being needed. So there is only one access point into this facility, and that's off 108th, as you can see up on near the northwest corner. So all access will be off 108th. We have, with it being seniors, 85 homes, that they generate very little traffic compared to a single family detached subdivision, which is usually 10 cars per day or 10 trips per day. A facility like this is significantly less. And we can talk more to that when I get my traffic engineer is available. We can talk more about that, but I think it's more like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 vehicle trips per day, and that includes in and out. So, and the beauty of seniors too is that they tend to not travel during the rush hours. So, with that said, we haven't needed to provide vehicular access to the facility off of Wadsworth, because the access off 108th is more than adequate for the low vehicle count during the peak hours in the AM and in the PM. So continuing around the building, we do have, you see these blue ponds. Those are detention ponds, not intended to be lakes or wet bottom ponds, but dry bottom ponds that in large storms will fill up and then drain off into Walnut Creek. Then on the west side of the site, it says that PR drainage way. That's our proposed drainage way. So Mile High Flood District that controls the flood plain analysis for the Denver metro area. That's an improvement that they've requested of us that basically takes water from the Ball property to the north, developed flows from the north, and those waters ultimately flow through our property and then down to Walnut Creek. So we're showing that proposed drainage way. So we will need to grade that out, put in some drop structures, provide little micro pools and little things within there so as to be able to control that flow. Currently, you probably don't see a lot of water flowing through there, but it would be triggered by development of that Ball property to the north, if and when that ever develops. And then the final little thing here that I wanted to mention is this little black line, which is a pedestrian bridge that would cross that drainage way, so that our folks that live within the Applewood Point, have access to a new Crusher Fines Regional Trail that's shown in orange, that connects into the trail that's there south of the villages at Walnut Grove, which is our neighbors to the west. So now's probably a good time to talk about those trails. So you do see quite a bit of gray lines throughout the property. Those are all 6 foot to 8 foot wide concrete trails. Up against the building, they're the 6 footers, and then the other ones more outside the perimeter of the building. Those would be geared. Those would be set up for 8 foot concrete trail. Starting at the southwest corner, we talked about the bridge. Then there's a drainage way on the east side of that drainage way is the trail that runs up to 108th. On the west side of the drainage way, that's what we're showing there is another item that the city asked us to propose is a trail, is a pedestrian and trail connection up to the middle of the Villages at Walnut Grove property. It's shown with those dashed arrows along the west side of the drainage way. So that would provide for connection from the Walnut Creek Trail or from our residents to be able to go through the villages there to the west, or for the villages residents to be able to come through our property or to be able to connect down to the Walnut Creek Trail. Up at the northwest corner of the property, what we're showing is another pedestrian connection, but also currently that sits as a vehicular emergency connection from 108th to get into the Villages of Walnut Grove. And so they have a single point of access for these duplexes. And years ago, when the Cooper family developed those duplexes, it was a requirement of them to put in an emergency connection to 108th. And if you've seen that lately, it's really dilapidated. It's broken up concrete. So what we are proposing to do, because it cuts through our property, is to put an easement around it, first of all, and then improve that with new concrete. And what we've talked about was also putting in, designate the concrete to also maybe a different color or a different pattern to designate it as a pedestrian connection up to 108th, because we will be building an 8-foot detached sidewalk along 108th to get you over to Wadsworth and 108th Avenue, where the bus stop sits today, just south of 108th. So my vision there for that would be you have your emergency vehicle access, which would be set up with a gate or bollards with a chain, and then there'd be a gap for pedestrians or bicycles to be able to get through that area. But the gates there intended for the emergency vehicles, and obviously something we need to work out with the fire and the police department. So that's what's envisioned for that. I mentioned the trail along 108th. Then also we have shown in orange. Now this didn't show up on your mailer. That's something we've added recently, is this orange arrow along the west side of Wadsworth, which shows a sidewalk connection down to the southeast corner of our property. And we just hadn't had that shown previously because it's a sidewalk to nowhere. But that's something we'll need to talk over with the city. It's just facilitated, or the reason for it is that the city likes to see improvements, adjacency improvements be constructed. So they've asked us to put in that sidewalk. We're also showing a sidewalk connection from the front entry of our building down past the asphalt drive and then to the bus stop, where that sidewalk stops right now, right there. Yep. There is currently a bus stop sitting in that general location, and all that sits there today is just a bench. So we would propose to build a bus shelter so that residents in the area and our residents have a place to sit and be protected from the elements while they're waiting for the bus. So I think that pretty much covers the site. The next sheet is elevations.
Eric, if I may pause for just a couple housekeeping items.
Sure.
For a moment. First of all, I think I spelled out official development plan. I think I mentioned at the beginning that a lot of this detail won't really come into play until the time that we get an official development plan submitted. That being said, the preliminary development plan, and I think I failed before to spell that out, PDP stands for preliminary development plan, typically shows these circulation points as arrows in a more general way. So this is just to sort of show you what they're thinking for the future. And we did receive a comment or a question about turn lanes. And if it's okay and you're able to stay with us, we will answer that after we've talked about the architectural elevations. Hopefully that works. If not, let us know in the box. Thanks, Eric.
Sure. So this will be real quick. I'm almost finished. These elevations, I just wanted to give the neighbors a feel for what we're proposing from a look perspective. So as noted here, these have not been formally submitted to the city yet, so nor have they been reviewed by staff. But this shows the 3 stories that we're looking at. The upper elevation is that backside of the building. It shows some balconies. Those balconies really have nice views of that to the southwest of the Walnut Creek drainage way, as well as to the mountains to the southwest. The elevation below that is the east elevation. You can see the garage entrance down there on the bottom. And then the other 2 are just elevations of the other wings on the east and west side. And again, the whole point here is to show the rich materials, the stone. We focus the stone at the base. We do have a nice hardy siding and timber, as well as the asphalt roof that the building will have. These are common architectural features that you see throughout the Denver metro area. I think it has that Colorado look, that Colorado feel, especially with the timbers that we're going to have. We've started working on some renderings, some 3D renderings of what we're envisioning. And once we get to that, that ODP stage, that's when we'll start presenting some of that information to y'all. So this, hopefully you get a feel for and you like what we're proposing from an architectural standpoint. And so just to close it out, just, as Amy has touched on a couple of times, the whole point of this first step of the process is this preliminary development plan, this PDP amendment. This will be the 7th amendment, believe it or not, to this PDP, which provides for 85 units, which is 8 dwelling units per acre. We're 10.7 acres, so 8 dwelling units per acre is, I like to round up to say 86, but the city rounds down to 85. So we're at 85. And really our goal of this PDP is, as Amy touched on, is just to, for the land use, which is the senior living, independent senior living land use, and then the vehicular and pedestrian connectivity. I like to be able to show our neighbors where we're connecting to them or connecting throughout the area, as well as where the utilities are going to be coming into and out of the site. And so those are my goals of this PDP process. So with that said, I do have my consulting team here. I've got a couple civil engineers, my traffic engineer, and my architect, as well as our landscape architect. So if there's any questions, we are here to answer whatever you have.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to ask Heath Klein to please come on and talk to us about the requirements for westbound left turn lanes into the property on 108th is the question we have first.
Yes, good evening. Heath Klein, Transportation Engineer, City of Westminster. And this development is looking at providing additional turn lanes. So as part of it, we are looking at providing dual left turns to northbound Watts Parkway so that it kind of matches the east side of the intersection, which currently has dual left turns onto southbound Watts Parkway. And in addition to that, the city has always looked at 108th Avenue as a major arterial, which will be a 5-lane section, is how we say that, which usually is the center turn lane and then 2 lanes in each direction. And so this road will be built out to have 2 eastbound lanes and then a separate right turn lane onto southbound Wadsworth Parkway. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. And hopefully that sufficiently answered your question. If you have other questions or comments, you can put them in the chat box as this last person did, and I will read them aloud. If you would like to state your question or comment orally, you can use the raise hand feature as is shown in this little graphic here, and a staff member will let you know when you can speak and be heard. Okay, so she has a follow-up question. Jennifer, will you be assisting us when she raises her hand?
Yes, I will unmute her and let her know she can speak.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there. Actually, my question wasn't answered. So I'm asking about specifically a turn lane westbound on 108th going into the community. What I'm concerned about is that people leaving Ball Aerospace or the Ball campus tend to stack the really long lanes trying to turn northbound on Wadsworth. That will definitely impact people trying to turn into the community should you have a turn lane there. I don't understand. I actually don't even think that it's possible to have the turn lanes as they will, both turn lanes be present. I'm just asking if that is what your plan is.
Okay, Heath, I'll
Thank
ask
you
you to come
again.
back on. Thanks.
Yeah, so Heath Klein. So thank you for that. And yes, so as part of the development, they are doing the traffic counts and the turning counts. So we are getting an understanding of that queue from the Ball campus or even further in the Westmore developments. But that is the reason why we are looking at doing dual lefts onto Wadsworth Parkway, so that way the additional stacking can be there. And as part of that, that will allow a left turn lane into the site. And as Mr. Checo has mentioned already in the presentation, there isn't the high peak hour trip generation from this site. So we don't anticipate that being a large problem of a lot of westbounders queuing up to turn left into the site, but there will be a left turn for that to turn into the site, and they'll just have to wait until the traffic signal clears the queuing, and then they can safely turn left into the site. Thank you.
Amy, I was wondering if it'd be good to show up that cross section, that we put in the PDP, or to show maybe even on the color site plan, and maybe explain in a picture how that's considered to be.
Keith, how do you feel about that? Do you want me to? It's not in the presentation, so I'll have to exit the presentation to do that.
I think at this point, it was great information, and we just do know that the city and the developer understand that there is some significant eastbound queuing that happens, and we are looking to do the improvements to allow a safe left turn into the site, as well as really accommodating some of the existing and what we call background traffic. So I don't know if we need that right now. It's pretty clear to me that we will address this left turn concern. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And did that answer your question, Stephanie?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So Heath, we have another question that I'm going to ask you to come back on for. Let's see here. I'm going to have to rearrange my boxes a little bit so I can see them. We have a few coming in now. Sorry, it's a lot to keep on my screen and juggle here, and I'm not able to expand these very easily. Okay, so first is from Richard Matan. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. He's asking, what is the likelihood of emergency access on the east side to Wadsworth? And what would that look like? So Heath, I know that we're recommending an emergency access there. However, we're not requiring it at this time. Your input is valuable. If you would like to see, if you believe there should be an emergency access there, we would like to hear that from you. However, Heath, if they decided they were going to provide an emergency access point, could you speak to what that would look like?
Yes. So right now, for the requirements of a second point of access to a certain site, it depends on the number of units that are in the building. This building being proposed at this time falls below the requirement to provide a second point of access. However, the city does strongly recommend the developer to consider a second point of access to Wads Parkway. CDOT, so Colorado Department of Transportation, is the controller of access to the State Highway 121, which is Wadsworth Parkway. So they have indicated that if there was an access point, it would have to be emergency access only and would not be able to be used on a daily. And it would have to have an emergency gate, so it would not be used. The city is still supporting the use of a second point of access just to provide that. But at this point, it's not a requirement. But regardless, we will be asking that, Mr. Checkle did mention that the sidewalk following Wadsworth Parkway will be constructed. And we do believe it would make sense to wrap that sidewalk down back into their site so that there's better pedestrian connection. But thank you for bringing this up, and we will continue to discuss this with the developer.
Thank you, and feel free to put anything else in there or raise your hand if you have any follow-up questions or comments based on those answers. So next I see the question, how much of the flood load from Ball goes east under Wadsworth at 108th and that intersection, and what percentage goes through this property? Thank you. And he's a neighbor to the east, Abbas Rajabi, I believe is his name. So I think it's Nathan Enck who can answer that.
Yeah, hi. So we're currently working hand in hand with Mile High Flood District as the city to evaluate the hydrology through this area. We have recently actually gotten a report back that has analyzed those flows, and there are certain criteria that this development needs to meet in order to carry those flows safely through this site. We have some ongoing studies and stuff that we've provided to the applicant and that are available that we can provide to anybody who's interested. But currently, this development is going to be required to build a conveyance structure, a drainage structure that conveys those flows safely across 108th down through their site to Walnut Creek.
Thank you, Nathan. Hopefully that answered your question. Again, if not, feel free to, and he says thanks, so it looks like it did. And then we have one other question in the box right now. Has there been a consideration as the access point into the community to be tied to the current emergency drive at the village to accommodate moving it farther west? Heath, are you the one to speak to that again? And do you need any clarification?
I can speak to that. Again, Heath Klein, City Transportation Engineer. So yes, we have entertained different ways to look at that existing emergency access point and better tie it into the development. But just as the last question was regarding the drainage, that becomes a major kind of point of contention right now of how do you extend that and also do some of those storm improvements. So we are looking at all options right now. And if it works to tie that in, that may be beneficial. But just as Mr. Checkle was saying as well, even if we don't do that, as that is supposed to be, the existing one is for emergency access only and should only be used when there is an emergency, because it is not public right of way, that we will have the developer help enhance that, but keep it as that emergency access only. But we are looking at different options. But at this point, due to the drainage improvements that are needed, it really hasn't risen to the top to accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. And he says he understands and thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat box right now. Jennifer, do you see anyone else with their hand raised?
I do not.
Okay. We'll give everyone a couple minutes here just to, in case they think of other questions. And we will be on here until 7 regardless. So you have a few minutes to think about whether you have any questions. I can go back to the site plan as needed as well. Okay, we have another one that came in. What is the time projected, or the time frame projected for completion of the project? Eric, would you like to answer that?
Sure. So we obviously in the entitlement process right now, we hope to and plan to be through the entitlement process this year, 2021. Start construction probably second quarter of next year, first or second quarter of next year. And then construction will probably take 16 to 18 months. So we're looking at the end of 2023, if I did my math properly there. So about the construction, like I say, is about 1.5 years. So the entitlements is another year. So we're looking at the end of 2023.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know what? With the few minutes we have left, since I'm not seeing any more questions, I do have 1 or 2 slides at the end here talking about next steps. So I should go over those. And I'm sorry, hopefully this will get to the person who did sign off already. But next steps, the developer will need to revise their plans and submit them for staff review again. Following the acceptance of their application, public hearings will be scheduled for review and consideration by Planning Commission and then City Council. Assuming approval, an ODP will then need to be submitted if it hasn't been before that. And if you have any other questions at any time, don't hesitate to contact me, Amy Johnson, and there's my email address for you, ajohnson@cityofwestminster.us. And you can also follow the project and its status on our development status webpage. Okay. And let me see, I thought I might have seen perhaps one more question come in. Yes. These boxes just seem to want to dock with when I don't want them to, sorry. Okay, will Village at Walnut Grove residents expect construction noise before 8 a.m.? Who would like to answer that question? I can't recall our construction hours. We don't think we have anyone on the building, but perhaps engineering might be able to answer that.
The hours are 7 to 6, Monday through Friday, and then I think 8 to 5 on Saturdays, and no work on Sundays and holidays. This is Michael Wright.
Thank you, Michael. Hopefully that answers your question, Stephanie. So on weekdays, I guess it would be, it could be before 7 a.m. or before 8 a.m. Up to 7 a.m. when they could start.
That's correct.
I believe we do have a project status page already where you can see the progress of this development and its review status. Once again, my email address is here for you. If you need my phone number, you can reach me at 303-658-2098. And it will be forwarded, since we are working remotely, to my phone. So yes, you can contact me that way as well. And invitations will be sent out again at the time of the Planning Commission and City Council hearings. Just FYI, you may have known that, but just in case. And as I mentioned at the beginning, in case any of you joined late, there will be another neighborhood meeting after we receive the application for the official development plan, or ODP. And if you need to find the development status webpage, you can search project status on our city website. That's cityofwestminster.us, as you can see in the email. And then there's a search bar at the top, I believe. Just about 3 minutes until 7 here. If you have any final questions, feel free to put them in. We can go over by a minute or so if you do need a little extra time to get those answered, if you have any. And as I mentioned before, maybe I'll go back to it now. This meeting is being recorded, and if anyone wants to go back and refer to anything that was said tonight, you may go to this link here at YouTube and watch this again. All right, here we are at 7 o'clock. I don't see any other questions. Hopefully you've gotten down my contact information. So thanks so much for joining us tonight. Don't hesitate to contact me again if anything else comes up. And we will see you later.
And I wanted to say thank you as well, Amy. I appreciate everybody's comments and thoughts. If you have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to give me a shout. You got my contact info in the mailer that we sent out. So feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email.
Great. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks, everybody else.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.